Welcome to Tuesday as we continue our mini Bible studies and we prepare for the 17th Sunday after Pentecost, September the 27th, 2020. Today we want to look at Psalm number 25, verses 1 through 9, and I will read that psalm for you and then share some reflections on the psalm and how it relates possibly to our first reading for this Sunday from Ezekiel. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. My God, I put my trust in you. Let me not be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. Let none who look to you be put to shame. Rather, let those be put to shame who are treacherous. Show me your ways, O Lord, and teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. In you have I trusted all the day long. Remember, O Lord, your compassion and love, for they are from everlasting. Remember not the sins of my youth and my transgressions. Remember me according to your steadfast love, and for the sake of your goodness, O Lord. You are gracious and upright, O Lord. Therefore you teach sinners in your way. You lead the lowly in justice and teach the lowly your way. Our first reading for today, or really for next Sunday, that I talked about yesterday, makes it clear that God will not require children to pay for the sins of their parents, or even allow them to rest satisfied in their parents' goodness. Rather, God will judge each person according to his or her own deeds, their works, whether or not they are righteous or wicked. This psalm responds by voicing a prayer that could possibly be on the lips of someone who has just been liberated from that feeling of guilt and sin and seeks now to embrace God's way for herself or himself. Those who have just heard the Ezekiel reading, verse 3 says, "Let none who look to you be put to shame. Rather, let those be put to shame who are treacherous." And this echoes the theme of a kind of an individual accountability rather than being held guilty or responsible for what our parents did, or even blessed by what our parents did. So this psalm is intimate, and it is intensely personal. It is voiced in the first person, singular, so it's individualistic, and yet it addresses God in a second person, singular way. Woven through all of this appointed portion of the psalm are four key themes. The psalmist's our total surrender to God, and variations on three other imperatives addressed to God. Don't let me be put to shame. Show, teach, and lead me in your paths. And remember your character and forget mine when it's been bad. The psalmist's surrender is declared beautifully in the opening line. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. Let's contemplate that a little bit. This is an offering of the deepest and truest parts of ourselves. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. It doesn't get any deeper than that. It doesn't get more intimate than that. So let's contemplate what that truly means when we say it. And this is an act of submission. It's touching in its profound vulnerability, and at the same time it's strong in its decision to make that commitment. Along that same lines, it also is predicting Jesus' statement, which comes later, the Gospel according to John in the 18th chapter. Jesus says, "No one takes my life from me. I lay it down. of my own accord, his own choice. The theme of surrender then reappears in verse 2. I put my trust in you. And again in verse 5, in you I have trusted all day long. This is an offering of the self. And it reminds we Christians that the path toward God, which finally leads us on the way to the cross. And it should not be lost on us that this offering of self, of lifting up our soul, is our first action on the way of trust, on the way of the cross, if you will. So this first imperative, let me not be put to shame. That sets the tone for verses 2 and 3. It reveals this sliver of human fear, of human doubt that restrains the psalmist's trust, or maybe sometimes our trust. Some commentators prefer a translation different for this verse that says, let me not be disappointed in putting my trust in you, lifting up my soul to you. Let me not be disappointed in the end. So this psalm is a testimony of one who is strong in faith. Yes, you are God. Yes, I trust you. Yes, I'm as sure as I can be that your ways are right. I've said before that faith is not the absence of doubt. It's faith in spite of doubt. So this idea, I am as sure as I can be that your ways are the right ways for me. And then comes this idea, please don't disappoint me. Please let me be right about you. So there's still that sliver of doubt. And with the psalmist there, we come face to face with what's really at stake when we surrender our whole selves in faith. Even when that surrender is to the God whose gracious mercy we have known so well. There is a shadow side to trust. And it's that yearning for that trust to be vindicated when there's that sliver of doubt. And there's this wonderful circular paradox that is framed out in this imperative that comes out of that sliver of doubt, is addressed to the very one in whom we've already been empowered to trust. So there, in my estimation, there can never be faith that doesn't incorporate just even a sliver of doubt. There's no such thing as complete faith. The second imperative here is, show me your ways, teach me your paths. And this kind of plays on a metaphor that life is a journey. The psalmist believes that there are many paths that are available and that there is confusion as to which path should we take. And that's inevitable. Because even in our lives, we come to kind of decisions where we have to choose which path is the right one. And sometimes it's not, this one's right and that one's wrong. But sometimes it's, well, they both look good and right. Which one should I choose? So the psalmist is asking God, maybe we can ask God in the same way, be present. Instruct us about the proper way to go. And that's in verses 4, 7, and 9. You know, if only my GPS had a setting option for God to tell me which way to go at all times. The third imperative comes in two parts and it dominates verses 7 through 9. And it's calling on God to remember God's character, which of course is compassionate, loving, steadfast, faithful, gracious, upright, merciful, all of those words that we give God's character, that we know as God's character. And the psalmist, remember your character, God, and don't remember my character, which is often sinful. And here's the connection to the first reading. We feel drawn to that imperative and to that verse 7. Don't hold me accountable, God. Hold on to your character, not mine. Ezekiel's word from God was that the children are released from any accountability for the sins of their parents. Here the psalmist pushes that even further and asks for release from the sins of his or her own past. Even as Christians who embrace that idea that we make confession each Sunday, and that idea that we rise to new life every day as we remember the forgiveness that's offered in our baptism, that which I've called resurrected life in many of my sermons. Here the psalmist's request almost is daring. It's fresh, it's hopeful, especially from some of the things we read in the Old Testament, where we think God is just waiting to punish people. He's not. He's not. Okay? We can't say God is merciful and forgiving and steadfast love and gracious and all of those things and then think God's just waiting to punish me when I do something wrong. Those two are incongruent. Have we ever felt haunted by our stupid or our sinful choices? I know stupid's not a good word, but what else can you sometimes call those choices? Well, me anyway. Sometimes I made some pretty stupid choices. We may be fortunate that the only consequences we face is merely being haunted by those choices, though sometimes that can be paralyzing enough. God is willing to follow the imperative of this psalm and remember everlasting divine compassion and love, not remembering our former sins. Therefore, we have this amazing good news, not just in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament as well. When we sit in church for worship, we want to hear more about how God's gracious character makes it possible, even necessary, even inevitable, that God will set us free from those burdens. And from the burdens of those who have to daily face the consequences of their former sins. And, there are those who are physically incarcerated, those who have suffered injuries because of their choices, those who feel all alone or somehow are exiled, stranded from their loved ones or friends, those who have been disinherited, those who have compromised health. The list can go on and on. But God wants them to know as well that He is not holding their sins against them. God is full of compassion, grace, mercy, and abounding in steadfast love. That is the good news that we hold on to every day as we remember our baptisms and begin a new day of resurrected life. Thank you for joining me today as we looked at the Psalms, as we continue this journey along toward the 17th Sunday after Pentecost, September 27th, 2020. Have a great day. Take care. God bless.